Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, or returning guest. His name is Ken Ammi. I've done many interviews, probably close to 20, mostly of his books, but we have a mutual interest in West Memphis 3, and he did some research a while back, and I've been going through some of my old archives. I've posted audio onto my podcast if you want to check that out, but he went through and looked at some of the publicly available pictures of Echols. It seems like he wanted to get a handle on it just like I did at the same time, around the same time, maybe 2012, 2013, 2014. So these are some dated pictures from back then, but there's about 80 to 90 of them, and I think they're kind of instructive. And we were talking the pre-show. This is a way of kind of insight into a person's characters, what they post on social media. So we're just going to kind of comment, go through these slides. Ken's going to talk about his background and his interest. So, Ken, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Awesome, man. So for people who haven't heard our earlier shows or anything, can you kind of talk about some of the books, your interest, and how you kind of got interested in the West Memphis 3?
Oh, good timing. I actually just finished writing another book, and all I need to do is fix up the cover, and it'll be ready to go.
Nice. What's the title? Do you have a title?
This one is going to be called The King, Og of Bashan, is Dead.
What's it about?
Yeah, so it's about the character that's named in the Bible, King Og, and he was he was a Repha, and he is known to have ruled over a region called Bashan. That's why he's called Og of Bashan. And what's funny is a friend of mine said, "Oh, so what does the Bible say about him?" And I said, "Well, virtually nothing." And he asked me, "Well, then how are you going to write a book about him?" And the answer to that question is laid out in the book. It's
Nice.
I kind of walked him through, why is this guy even an issue when the Bible says nothing about him? And it's kind of been typical throughout history, actually, that people like to take characters about which the Bible says hardly anything at all, and they write what we could call historical fiction about them, or folklore. So that in folklore, Og does all kinds of things, right? He's like a super duper character, and much is made of him that we couldn't back with any evidence whatsoever. For instance, some people put him way, way back in pre-flood days, and he survived the flood by hanging onto the ark, the outside of the ark, and Noah feeds him through the window, and he's a quote unquote giant, and all kinds of crazy stuff about him that's obviously folkloric. And this does tie into some of the shows we've done in the past. What happens is when the pop researchers of neo-Nephilology, right?
Right.
Nephilim studies.
Yeah, we've done a show on that.
Yeah. When those guys get a hold of him, all of a sudden, this guy who was a Repha, and for all we know, just a regular guy who was a king, all of a sudden, he is a Nephil, so he's like a half-breed hybrid, and he somehow survived the flood, or is just the offspring of newly born post-flood Nephilim, which is totally not a biblical teaching. And since he's a Repha, then he's also like some sort of living dead entity. I mean, just that's how you end up realizing why I refer to what these guys are doing not as biblical Nephilology, but as neo-theo sci-fi. That's really what it is. And so, well, that's how I ended up with a whole book about a guy who's hardly mentioned in the Bible, because it's more about how people speak about him, and not just the pop researchers, but also a lot of scholars. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what are you guys going on and on and on about? Because you have data points, but the way you connect them is just not legitimate. And by the way, so the second I was done with that book, I had to go to the next one in my series about reviewing movies with alien and UFO themes. And so I had one that was almost done. So I editing that one. And then the second I'm done with that one, meanwhile, I've been trying to finish off of another book in a series, which is about the Great Flood, Noah's flood, the deluge. So I'm working on volume 2. So I pretty much just have book after book after book that I need to just polish off. You know me.
No, you've been busy. You are busy. You are a very consistent publisher. So let me know when you publish that book. I'll have you back on. We can talk about it.
Oh, appreciate it. So now in this case, what clued me into and maybe you should give a little tiny bit of background about the crime, because when you're talking about the West Memphis Three and Damien Echols in particular, he's just one of the young men who was actually convicted, and convicted more than once, for the murder of 3 children. And so what clued me in on that was really your book on the West Memphis Three. And then I started just becoming interested in Damien Echols, the person himself, and how does he portray himself? What does he reveal about his own character? What kind of messages is he putting out there for us to kind of get to know his interests and all of that? So this is what tonight's show is really about. I did want you to talk about the crime for a second for those who aren't aware, but this show isn't about the crime. This show is about one of the individuals involved, and kind of how he sort of exposes himself to the public, literally to the public on the World Wide Web.
Right. So there's tons of information out there. He's active on social media. He has very famous friends, which we're going to go through. But the crime happened May 5th, 1993. 3 young boys disappeared, later found the next day, submerged in water with sticks, beaten. I mean, the forensics are really graphic and brutal. There was all kinds of rumors about people. There were suggested people who did it. Eventually, they actually interviewed Echols. He clammed up. I think he failed his polygraph test. But then a month later, June 5th, 1993, June 3rd, excuse me, Jesse Miskelly was brought in. He confessed. He implicated Echols and another guy, Jason Baldwin. They were all arrested. Miskelly asked to be separated or bifurcated from the other 2 people who were supposedly involved in the crime. There were 2 trials. All 3 were found guilty in 2 separate trials by 12 juries in each trial, and that happened in 1994. And then it just was a saga. They eventually got let out. They used an offer play bargain with the new prosecutor in Arkansas and got out, used an offered plea, which is a Supreme Court case, allows you to proclaim innocence while even declaring guilty. They signed on the dotted line for pleading guilty to first-degree murder. And there was all kinds of, Ken has just dropped off. There's all kinds of elements in the case. There were all kinds of statements about occultism or esotericism interests. The police statements were very chock full of all kinds of people that they interviewed. And I've kind of gone through, really, if people are interested, they can go to my podcast. Most of my information's on the podcast, but you'll see I've read into the record some of these old case files and statements to police involving occultism, things like that. So that's kind of a rough overview. My book was done in 2012, 1 year after they got out. And there was a lot of research done. And Echols, since his release, he got tattoos all over his body. He actually said, I think in one of my last interviews or streams, he said he was going to turn his body into kind of a magical book. So he's got all kinds of symbols, and Ken got a lot of pictures of those as well. But there was just a lot of things involved. He got out. He's written books about occultism. He's admitted to certain things. And he seems to have associated. There's pictures in here of him with another occultist, Genesis Peorage. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So that is basically the overview of the West Memphis Three. I just finished it, Ken. If you want to just take it from here, go for it.
Yes. So again, my interest was focusing in on Echols because as far as I know, the other two guys disappeared off the face of the earth. Right? They're not milking this thing. They're not essentially making a career out of it. Their infamy and fame. And so I started reading up again on just what Echols said about himself and how he portrays himself. And part of it, what was really fascinating, is that particularly while he was in prison, he essentially wrote what I call the diary of a possessed man. Right? He would keep diaries, and therein he was very, very, very open about how he was becoming increasingly possessed. Straight up. I mean, there's just no other way to put it, and I'm not exaggerating. That's just what he did. He just gives examples, and interestingly enough, he would talk about trying to take in whatever little extra nutrition he could to prepare his body for the possession, the like full-on possession. And that's something I've heard from others as well who are in that kind of situation. And interestingly enough, there's a movie that stars Johnny Depp called The Secret Window. And one of the deleted scenes from that movie is where you can see him kind of trying to take better care of his body. He gets braces, he's eating better, he's exercising, and it's all part of becoming possessed, right? In the movie, there's basically an antagonistic character who doesn't really exist. It's all in his mind, or rather, it's all a demonic situation. And so that was really interesting. But that Echols would be saying that in real life, and that's sort of a known thing, that when somebody's pretty much aware that they're getting possessed and they're not necessarily against it because they're asking for it literally, then they have to prepare their bodies for, what a shock to the system that sort of thing is. And so
right. He said once, like, I'm eating Kool-Aid to prepare for my transformation. He said.
Right. So basically anything he could get in prison, any extra little thing that he could shove down his gullet, he would. And unfortunately, since my website is down, I can't access all of the articles that I had posted about him and this issue in particular, because I left all the legalist stuff or legal stuff to you. I was totally focused on writing articles about how he was portraying himself, the things he was saying about himself. And this is the kind of stuff he was saying. And then his interests are absolutely just what we would very generally call occult, witchcraft, and all kinds of things related to sorcery and spells and you name it. I mean, it's all under the big top for him. So at one point I had put together a whole bunch of images, some just being nothing but screenshots of things that Echols himself would post on his own Twitter page, right? So that's how he's communicating to the world, literally worldwide web. And if you recall, by the way, his fan base, which he called the Chupacabras, you remember that?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he's referring to his fans as, blood-sucking entities. I mean,
right. Blood-sucking.
Wow.
Nighttime entities of myth, right?
Yeah. And then some of this also has to do with me, putting some images together that were more along the lines of speculation and whether there were these correlations between things that I personally noticed. So we're going to go through some of this in like a slideshow style. And you'll remember, William, that you and I did a show on the FBI agent's report on satanic crime.
Yeah, Ken Lanning, the Lanning report.
Kenneth. Ken Lanning, and that was a pretty interesting show we did, and we got some good feedback on it. And so does the creepy imagery and the occult practices mean that Echols is guilty? Of course not. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. This isn't that kind of show. That's another issue altogether. And this is just about him. So, like, for instance, we've had this first image on the screen for a long time. And, well, I mean, I know I'm not, posting this kind of stuff on my Twitter feed unless I were doing it to say, wow, this is really creepy, horrible stuff. But he's making it a habit of,
this is for comment and yeah.
I mean, he's basically making it a habit of traveling around wherever he goes, posting photographs of really creepy, disturbing, demonic stuff. That's like his, appears to be some level of obsession, right?
Right. Very much so. Like it's he's very consistent, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't get confused about his interest. Like, he won't suddenly be posting the latest cupcakes he baked. Well, unless the cupcakes were like topped with skull-shaped frosting or something.
Right.
So why don't you go to the next one?
All right, let's do it. These are for commentary and criticism. We're commenting and criticizing.
Yeah. So do you want to read the captions there?
Yeah, sorry. The image from Damien Echols' Twitter page compared to Baphomet. So this woman is making the above, as above, so below sign, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is just me noticing, hey, I recognize that pose, I don't know who she is or what she thought she was doing, but to Echols, that was something significant enough to post it. Right. And, people like William and I, we recognize what he's trying to portray through that. Right. I mean, which in this case is the Baphomet.
The Eliphas Levi Baphomet, right? And that also, his buddy Marilyn Manson has that Solvet Coagula tattooed on his arm too, just like the Baphomet.
Yeah, and that Solvet Coagula, that I'm going to take us in a weird direction, but I'm sure you've heard of that TV. Well, I'm dating myself. I was going to say TV show. Right now I have to say something like Wi-Fi streaming service or something, right?
Right. On what show were you going to say?
Breaking Bad.
Right.
So
what about?
I did. I included it in one of my books, and what I pointed out is that is a show about mystical alchemy disguised as a show about scientific chemistry. And in the very first episode of the show, when Walter White is still a science teacher, what he's explaining to his class, he's teaching chemistry, and he's talking exactly about solvents and coagulants. That's exactly what he's talking to them about. And so the way that ties into mystical alchemy is that's the whole point, is to sort of cause a death of the personality and then have a alleged, mystical rebirth. And that's what happens to Walter White through the process of that show. He goes from being a respectable science teacher, respectable as he is, to becoming a producer of methamphetamine, where there's all kinds of death and murder and craziness around him all the time, to the point where he reaches this stage where he's just very nihilistic and very stoic, like his personality completely changed. And so that's what that show was about. Behind everything else, that's what it was about. And it's a ton of symbolism in that show, incidentally. Some of it pretty blatant. Like there's a time where he's purchasing. Oh yeah, there's a time. Some of it's just so blatant that there's a time that in the show he's purchasing a certain liquid chemical, and he's like, "Oh, you brought me 665 gallons. Where's the other one?" Okay, it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out, right? I mean, it's so obvious. And so this is, I think,
that's not uncommon. They do that in Stranger Things all the time. Little word game, 77. Which we'll talk about soon.
Right, 11. Yeah, 11.
11.
Yeah,
L.
Absolutely. yeah, it's very very telling. So
Yeah,
and that's just
I'm convinced when they definitely listened to one of my talks before they wrote that first Stranger Things, no question, because they have the smiley face, they've got all that stuff, the 77s, the 11s, they've got it all integrated, and the imagery of this case, the imagery of the West Memphis Three, all the way to season 4. I didn't watch season 3, but it's all that stuff. I should probably show some of my other pictures, but yeah, like it's the
yeah,
same
you
trailer.
should. That'd be interesting to do if you could do a show about that. That'd actually be really interesting.
I'll have to put it together. Yeah.
But now a little background. Again, if I had my website, I would direct you to certain articles. But basically, what I found interesting is Eliphas Levi. He claims that this illustration is from an ancient idol. I've not been able to track that down, but I am aware that the Baphomet has a twin mirror image, and literally a mirror image, right? It's the hand positions are reversed, and it's a much more simplistic illustration. It's almost just like a line drawing, and he called it Azima, Azima. And there is a idol mentioned in the Bible, although in English Bibles it's generally spelled Ashima. Of course, it doesn't describe what it looked like, but anyhow, if anybody ever looks up Azima idol or whatever in a search engine, actually they'll probably end up finding stuff I posted about it. So yeah, there's that one. So why don't we go to the next one?
Let's do it.
So I mean, it's kind of like I said, he's traveling around, and just you can literally see through his eyes the kind of things he's noticing, like this magic theater. I'm sure, I don't know what it is. I would imagine it's just a good old fashioned movie theater, but to him, what stands out is that it's called magic. And as we both know very well, William, it's to point out that it's magic with a K, right?
Right.
What number letter is that in the alphabet?
Between 10 and 12, I think.
You do the math, audience. You do the math.
One following 10.
And then what's the other one? Like ravenous wolves, right? I mean, I don't know where these are from, but this is kind of like I said, getting an idea of how this guy's thinking and the things he's noticing.
Oh, don't forget the full moon there, right? Yeah, the suggestion is that these are lycanthropes or werewolves. Full moon.
Right. So this it would be like werewolves. So guess what? Another mystical transformation, another destruction of the self, and a styled rebirth into something completely different, a different characteristic, different personality, different everything. Like it's like a corrupt form of the concept of being born again. Is you're born into something that's well, certainly not what you were before, and certainly not better in any kind of commonsensical way that you would imagine a person would be reborn. This is always like reborn into the bottom line is that paganism, by any other name, ultimately always breaks down to blood and sex. It's inevitable. Blood and sex, that's all it is.
Oh, is it, what's the word? Thanateros? Thanateros? Death and sex? The luminance of Thanateros.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the truth. Do you want to explain this one?
Yep. I mean, all we're doing at this point is just still continuing to see what he's posting on his Twitter page. And here we have a tarot from 3 different decks, including apparently one made into some kind of a pie or a cookie. And even the person on the magician on the tarot card is in a Baphomet-like pose. You notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then some kind of certificate that apparently was about to be granted to him
No, that's one that he's granting out. The Crimson
Oh, it's
Lotus.
his. That's right. It's his
His
own.
thing in Salem, yeah.
That's right. And you see there, by the way, and the certificate that he hands out for tarot, and it says the Crimson Lotus School of Magic and Tarot. And this time it's magic with a CK. So he's basically initiating people into whatever he calls magic and also tarot. And there at the bottom right, you have the symbol that we're going to get to. You notice that? That's the one on the back tattoo. Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to that.
I do. That's it. So the sun, the black sun motif, whatever you want to call it. The tarot, the magician. I don't know what that cake is. I hope it's not a cake of light, as Quilly would describe
Ew.
it. Yeah. It would be bad.
So again, more fun stuff that he finds. Little stamps, ink stamps of Ouija boards and all kinds of creepy things, including Peanuts Happy Halloween lunchbox.
Right. And I think these are all kind of in his Salem days, I think.
Right, because at one point he did move to Salem, Massachusetts, in order to be like in the hub of witchcraft of the country, Although honestly, I think the country's gone very much the way of witchcraft by any other name, occultism by any other name. It's a lot more rampant nowadays, but that's where he wanted to be, right? That's where he wanted to be. I mean, that tells you something about him right then and there.
Right. He identified with the witch persecutions. So
yeah. Right.
So that, it's holding the skull. That's like the old Hamlet motif, right? So,
yeah, Yorick.
Here we go. Dear York. And then here's Echols with all his pals.
Yeah, why don't you read that?
Damien Echols and some supporters, including Dave Navarro, Alan Horn, the Warner Brothers president, Henry Rollins, Peter Jackson, etc.
And so again, some of this stuff is speculative, and just some of it is just showing. I don't know what it means when somebody stands next to somebody and they get a picture together. It might be like, oh, I met this cool guy, or oh, that's a celebrity. Or it might be like, hey, we're in on this thing, Gabish. We got it at Cosa Nostra going.
Right.
I mean, who knows?
Well, you're the one who sent me that picture of Peter Jackson with the Echols style tattoo.
Yeah, that's coming up. I was going to, yeah. So that shows you that that's a pretty close relationship, because I don't have any tattoos, nor will I. And I'm certainly not going to get one because of some guy I just randomly met for a little bit. You got to have a kind of a closer relationship than that, I would imagine, to basically scar your body for life, Yeah.
One of the big supporters of Echols while he was still in jail and financiers was Peter Jackson. He was apparently one of the real financial backers. So, and next to Jackson is Amy Burke. She is the director of the West of Memphis, or helped out make that interesting piece of film. I won't call it a documentary, but that piece of film. And there's like, infamously, she was on The View with these two and talked about the prehistoric prehistoric beasts who came out and attacked the children. I mean, that's off the charts. Anyway.
Wow.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Have you seen that video? I'll
that does not sound familiar. Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, it's send that along.
I always be sure.
Okay.
So this is another one, Damien Echols with Eddie Vedder of the band Pearl Jam. Then another one with Marilyn Manson, Satanist and musician. And then another one with Genesis P. Orge, the Satanist, transhumanist, artist, and member of the Process at the Final Judgment, among other groups. Toby.
Yes. Sonic Youth and all that, right?
Throbbing Gristle.
Yeah.
Friends with Peter Christopherson. Yeah. This is a very dark person. That's a very, very dark person right there. Genesis P. Orge.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, you'd kind of wonder, what is Damien Echols doing getting around so much that he can basically walk into a place and he's the celebrity du jour. And that's
Right.
what really these other celebrities turned him into. They turned him into a celebrity by backing him, and they made it so that basically he can go to concerts that are being put performed in his benefit, and all kinds of, you name it, all kinds of events where he can just easily become the headliner just by showing up, you know.
Right. And you show something in these pictures too, right? Let's see the next.
Yeah.
We'll get up to the next one, but yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another one. This is Dave Navarro and Johnny Depp wearing Egyptian Ankhs. Note the occult number 13 tattoo. Also tattoo stating "I am alone and I am utterly alone," which is a quote from the movie Beetlejuice, wherein it is stated by a character played by Winona Ryder, who's the goddaughter of Timothy Leary and also a West Memphis 3 supporter. The drug guru who claimed to be continuing the work of Aleister Crowley, who's a friend of Genesis P-Orridge. There appears to be 666 degrees of separation. Probably very true.
You like that, huh?
Yeah.
And this is what I mean by, who knows? I mean, maybe some of this is much ado about nothing, but I was just pointing out things that I noticed. And I mean, when you have a body full of symbolism, a literal body where you've tattooed symbolism, then yeah, someone like me is going to come along and go, huh, you know, I wonder what that is.
So I am utterly alone. That's in Beetlejuice, but I thought, wasn't there like didn't he have some kind of reference to Alice? No, not Alice in Wonderland. I could have sworn Navarro had some other statement of what's the one with the Wicked Witch of the West? Wizard of Oz. I thought he had some Wizard of Oz statement, but maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe I have not explored his entire body, I must admit.
I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you about Navarro off.
Mm.
He was actually interviewed by Isaac Weishaupt.
Oh, okay. Oh, I remember that. It was actually, I don't know if Isaac interviewed him, but he interviewed Isaac.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember that. I remember he interviewed Isaac, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's go to the next one. Dave Navarro from the band Jane's Addiction is another Damien Echols supporter. And shares many of the same tattoos and themes.
Yeah, and I mean, so there you go. A bunch of those symbols vary just slightly. There's one. Well, most of them are called the Il Cornuto, or devil's horns, you know. And of course, if you're in Texas, then that apparently means that you're a fan of some kind of college football team. But not everybody doing that in these sort of contexts is saying, "Hey, I'm a fan of a football team."
Right. I don't think that this is in the sportsman. Something else is definitely going on with Dave Navarro. Dave Navarro into taking Kavadi, quote, taking Kavadi, a ritual that comes from Kavadi Atam, which is a ceremonial worship of the Hindu god of war and victory, Murugan, a.k.a. Kartikeya. The ritual involves transcending physical pain to gain some form of enlightenment. Here, Navarro is seen hanging from hooks, piercing his skin, and pierced with metal-tipped feathers.
Yeah, this is very typical of not just this ritual, but yoga in particular, especially the more extreme forms of yoga, where the positions are very demanding on the body. The whole point of which is to try to get a person to, quote unquote, realize or recognize that they are a transcendent being, so that they seek to overcome the pain and just kind of recognize that the pain is happening to the body, but the person isn't the body, right? The person is the spirit or soul. And I mean, there's a lot of truth in that, but it's like the way they go about it is to traumatize the body to bring about this kind of enlightenment that there's something beyond. And so really it's another form of mystical alchemy, like we talked about before. This is just much more hands-on, right? So the yoga is the same basic principle, is you're straining your body to the point of recognizing that you're something beyond it. So when people say, yoga is just stretching, well, then why do you call it yoga? Why do you do what yogis do? If you're just stretching, just stretch. But it's not about that, There's
Not the
a whole lot
original
more.
purpose. The original purpose was to exhaust the body so you could leave it and communicate with the gods. That's what that whole last thing is. I mean, it's been westernized and nobody really.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Right.
But, I mean, and the original yogas you had these spiritual gifts. You had like energy powers and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of mantras and all kinds of stuff. And that's why I was saying that maybe at one point Salem was the hub of occultism in America, but now it's widespread. And I think yoga is one of our national religions right now, straight up.
Yeah, no doubt. Here in LA, it's all over the place.
Yeah, of course.
Dave Navarro's Gustav Klimt-inspired tattoo on one arm dichotomized in true occult fashion with the Catholic Lady of Guadalupe tattoo on the other. His version of Klimt's painting has a skull at bottom and the other to dichotomize the angel at the bottom of the lady image. And so you see this kind of like skull.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, I guess I have a typo there. It should read, painting has a skull at bottom in order to dichotomize.
I see. I got you.
The angel at the bottom.
Right.
So
like they changed the motif, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like a life and death thing, right? And although you notice the Klimt painting has a lot of crosses all over it,
right?
And the Our Lady of Guadalupe imagery, man, that is a whole entire story all its own, because that is an alleged apparition of supposed Mary that conveniently happened originally at the site of an abandoned Aztec temple to some kind of a goddess. Okay, and so this being, if it ever even happened, this being appears to Juan Diego and says, "Hey, I want a sanctuary built right here to me." And unfortunately, he wasn't savvy enough to say, "And who on earth do you think you are that we're going to build a sanctuary to you? The Lord rebuke you," And so allegedly, these roses miraculously grew, and he plucked them and picked them up and put them in his tilma, right? His like a robe-like vestment. And when he dropped them in front of the priest, all of a sudden, that image had appeared on the tilma miraculously. And you see she's standing on the moon. Oddly enough, it's a crescent moon, which is supposed to be white, but I don't know why. For some reason, it's black. And that takes my mind to Revelation chapter 12, where there's a vision of a woman with the sun at her head and the moon at her feet.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, this is just straight up occultic, because you can't really associate whatever that is with the actual historical Mary, Mother of Jesus. There's just no way, period.
Gotcha. West Memphis 3 support wear and Damien Echols at arrest and during trial.
Yeah,
so you
giving us the old. Yeah, I mean, this was a cottage industry. You could purchase all kinds of clothing and paraphernalia to show your support for multiple times convicted child murderers.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then this is another one. Damien Echols' mother took these pictures of him just before his arrest. It may be some form of Four Directions ritual, which is a common part of ceremonial occultism. That may be very true. That may be true. They said that she said that he was afraid that they were going to beat him up, so they took these pictures to have something from before. Mm-hmm. So that's what at least their rationale is. And I did a whole article you can see on my website about Echols and the pentagram. So you can.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah,
I was going to mention that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it might be coming up here. Honestly, so I should maybe mention that I had posted these images on a website, and then all of them got deleted. I actually haven't seen these in many years. It's one of a handful of websites where I posted stuff and they got completely destroyed.
Yeah, I didn't see them in 10. I haven't seen them in 10 years either. I had a copy of them, but no. What happened? I remember what happened. They were somewhere else, and I downloaded them all. Yeah.
No.
I just kept copies of them.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because as far as I knew, they were gone.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the pentagram?
Yeah, I think a long time ago I posted a video that's just a slideshow without me even saying anything, just to show them, if I remember correctly, on my YouTube channel. But yeah, I think if the chest pentagram doesn't come up, I guess we'll mention it. But apparently, it appears as if at one point or another he had carved or very lightly tattooed a pentagram on his chest.
And you can vaguely see it in this picture. I did a whole article on it.
Yeah.
It's Damien Echols and the pentagram. You can see it on my website under kind of where my articles are. But he talked about it in court. So they asked him about the pentagram. He admitted to putting it on his chest, but he said it was an upward-facing pentagram. But the way that I looked at it, the way the dots are, you can't really see the lines, but you can vaguely see the dots. And if you connect them together, it's a downward-facing pentagram.
Frankly, I think that whole upward-facing versus downward-facing, I think that's just a scam, honestly.
Interesting. Like, it's still, either way you look at it, it's occultic, right?
Well, because, if I would have thought of this ahead of time, I would have illustrated it. But you think about a upward-facing pentagram, right? So that is a 5-pointed star. And then what is a pentagon? Well, that's a 5-sided shape. So within a pentagram, there's a pentagon, right? That's the center part.
Right.
Right. Okay. So if you take an upward-facing pentagram, and then within the pentagon, you draw lines between the 5 points, guess what? It forms an upside-down pentagram.
Right.
But then within that upside-down pentagram, if you do the same thing, you'll end up drawing a right-side-up pentagram. And within that, there's an upside-down pentagram. And it's like fractal geometry. It just goes on forever. Upside down, right side up, upside down, right side up, just eternally. So to me, that's why I'm saying it's a scam, because the one is the other and the other is the one. They're all mashed together. They're the same.
Right. Then, you got all your celebrity eye symbols and all that stuff.
What's funny is way back many, many, many years ago, when people were first starting to put these collages together, I thought, I'm sure that all of us have sat around at one time or another and did something like that, even without realizing it. And someone takes a snapshot and they think you're trying to make a symbol. But then because back in my day, my teenage years, it was all about heavy metal and death metal and black metal. And I thought, I'm going to research some of those guys, because I'm sure everyone's been doing the same kind of stuff. And they weren't. I don't know what on earth happened to pop stars and celebrities where they started getting creepier than the, death metal and black metal guys I used to listen to back in the day. What on earth happened?
Yeah, they're creepier. They're definitely creepier. There's Echols with his thumbs. I did a whole article on Echols with the horns of Pan. That's what Crowley's little hand gesture here is. Horns of Pan.
Yeah, and you could say, okay, maybe he's got a weird habit where he sticks his thumbs out, but when it's just happening repeatedly, it's all too easy, considering his interests, that maybe he's just doing something very purposeful, and has been for decades, of course. Incidentally, get the point. You look at the photo of him as a mere teenager and now as an adult male, quite a few decades after the fact, he's still the same guy doing the same stuff with the same interests.
Yeah. Damien Echols with Mahez, aka Mihos Mysis. Mios, Mahez, and Mahez, Egyptian god of war, name means, quote, he who is true beside her. Also in keeping with Egyptian. Come on, you dummy. Go away.
They're coming after you, William.
I'm like on a mesa thoroughfare. Also in keeping with Egyptian god imagery, Echols has been seen in hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil, pose with friends. He chose it. Okay. He chose to speak no part in this and keep silent. The Greek god Harpocrates was borrowed from the Egyptian form of the child Horus. Silence ensures the keeping of mystery of religion, secret society knowledge away from the hoi polloi. Or ahoy polloi, as they say in Caddyshack.
Oh, is that right?
It's like Caddyshack. Yeah, there's a sequence where the caddy shows up at the club and Spaulding walks over to him and says, "Ahoy, polloi." the booger eating kid, Spaulding.
Yeah. Well, just for those who don't know, and that is an extremely obscure phrase, hoi polloi. But
it's like old English, right? Isn't it like?
Yeah, I don't know where I got it from, but I bust it out every now and then. It's basically just referring to the common person, the great unwashed masses and all of that.
It's a super snobby term by elitists or rich people.
I can't help it. I love the term hoi polloi.
Yeah. So anyway, there's Echols, the start of Harpocrates, sign of silence. I think I did another article about him in the sign of silence.
Yeah, you did.
Got them all down. Yeah.
Yeah. So here again, you see that famous depiction from the Sistine Chapel of Adam, and Crowley in one of his supposed yoga style poses, because he did a whole book about yoga, incidentally, seeming to take that same kind of pose, and Echols looking to be chilling out, but to me quite obviously trying to strike a very particular pose.
Yes, indeed. Slide 19. Silence is an important concept for occult. You want to say something?
No, I was going to say, there you go, what you were just talking about.
Silence is an important concept for occult secret societies, mystery religions. Damien Echols, Rihanna, Aleister Crowley, and some idols and various versions of expressing the point of keeping the occult. Keeping secret, hidden knowledge, secret and hidden. Tattoo on Johnny Depp states silence, exile, cunning from James Joyce's book, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Therein the point of the phrase is, quote, I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms I will allow myself to use, silence, exile, and cunning. And that is Crowley in his magical garb and outfit, making the sign of silence under the something of Horus, the wings of Horus.
Yeah, like flying disc. There's a lot of terms for it. Yeah.
And that one thing of Echols' sign of silence, he's doing that right in front of Piers Morgan on the Piers Morgan show. Mm-hmm. So this is a huge inside kind of joke for these guys.
Told you, Cosa Nostra, Gavish.
Yeah, there it is. And so he's making these like Masonic gestures. These are from Masonic handbooks, right?
Right.
That's what he's showing there. And this is Echols from the Golden Gods. I think this is 2012. Sorry. Damien Echols speaking at Revolver Magazine's Golden Gods Award. He was introduced by Marilyn Manson in 2012. So that's interesting. And then we've got the unicursal hexagram, sigil of Aleister Crowley's Thelemic Order of the Golden Dawn, composed of 2 lightning bolts. Lightning is a popular cult symbol due to Jesus having stated, quote, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, unquote, Luke 10:18. So, yeah. And that the actual unicursal hexagram was invented by Crowley, is my understanding.
Yeah, from what I recall, he wanted a hexagram, but that wasn't disconnected. So if you look at a typical hexagram, that's a 6-pointed star. It's really made up of 2 triangles. So by definition, you're mashing together 2 separate geometrical shapes, where he wanted to draw one that was continuous. So that's why you can follow the lines, and they just kind of are eternal, right? They go one into the other and back again.
Yeah, it is. And that diagram or whatever, the Thelemic Order of Golden Dawn picture that you have on there has the 5-pointed pentagram within the 6-pointed hexagram. So that's the microcosm, macrocosm, 5 and 6, the number of magic, the number of the magician, all that stuff.
Oh man, what is 5 plus 6? I used to know this.
I think it's between 10 and 12.
I'm gonna have to remember that line of yours. It's between 10 and 12.
Dave Navarro's Aleister Crowley Unicursal Hexagram. This version contains a hidden upside-down pentagram in the form of a Rosicrucian flower. Right, but there's the 5 again, the 5 and the 6, right? Yeah.
Right.
And that, I think the rosy cross, that's the secret meaning of the cross, right? The rose on the cross means the rose of something like it on the dead cross of Christianity, right? There's a very negative meaning there, if I remember correctly. All right, we're only at 23. We're talking too much. We got another 60 to go.
All right, go for it. Just read
Damien
and
Echols,
then.
I have Horus brought that too. He's given the eye from a source of ancient Egypt, a drawing of young Eccles within a symbol of Aleister Crowley related to Ordo Templi Orientis, right? So
there we go. Have it on his hat, infamous hat. Yeah.
Right, and that's the differentiation from some Christian symbols, which has the eye and the triangle. The Crowley eye is the eye of Horus. So it's just some people say, "Oh, there's this old church in,
somewhere
Germany."
in Europe. Yeah.
And it's different meaning. That's the that's the Laman of the OTO on the left. I have Horus in the triangle, and that is total sexual magic symbolized by the dove going into the chalice. And you can figure out what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Echols, the Egyptian Ankh, aka Crux Ansata, is a symbolic of life, sometimes shown as the ostrich feather fan behind a pharaoh. In occult symbolism, it denotes fertility, male cross and female serpent.
And notice, by the way, how I believe this is before and after. Initially, the bottom of the Ankh was like a shape of a blade, a knife, something that would pierce. And then apparently he had it filled in to make it more traditional for some reason.
Interesting.
Like, what do they call that? The witch? Oh, maybe. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, note that before and after, it seems to be styled as an athame, a ceremonial dagger, and later styled as more of an Ankh. Example of usage in Egypt and by Aleister Crowley's OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis. And that's like a lesser known number right there. 777 is like it's like the electricity of the magic, and 418 is the number of total global illumination. So you'll see that on there. It's definitely full of cult stuff. 13s.
Yeah, because the 418 is the 13.
Right there. Dragons symbolize various things to various cultures. Here's an example. Quote, the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered to devour her child. As soon as it was born, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against and his angels. The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. They worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast. Revelation 12, 4, 7, 9.
Revelation 12, which I mentioned a little bit ago, right?
So, yeah, and then they have he and Echols, Depp and Echols have the same thing. It's the I Ching. Depp and Damien Echols, Ching, Chinese divination hexagram made up with 2 trigrams. Depp stated, quote, I went to Disneyland with Damien of the West Memphis 3. He had just gotten out of jail. He wanted to see Disneyland, so I took him. Afterwards, we went and got tattoos together. That's my way of documenting things in my life, unquote. Echols stated, quote, what this represents is whenever you're facing huge obstacles, you don't focus on them or you'll lose heart and be defeated. Instead, focus on just putting one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, unquote. The hexagram made up of ground or wind and force or heaven. It means small accumulating taming power of the small harvest. I've heard people say that represents Lucifer as like the wind, god of the air, lord of the air. I've heard that interpretation too. So. There's Crowley. Even here, there may be a Aleister Crowley influence as he wrote about Taoism and specifically the I Ching, form of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, Tao Te King. And there's his Sigil Magic by Damien Echols on Twitter. That's the Theban alphabet. Those are all sigils. All right, you can read this one.
Johnny Depp and Damien Echols shared sigil tattoos. Echols stated, quote, in the entire realm of ceremonial magic, there is nothing I love more than working with angelic energies. Quote unquote angelic, I would say. Often I would create a talisman to serve as a focal point of energy, close quote. The Bible states, as we read before, so the Bible states Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. The tattoo includes the letters referring to brotherhood, written in the Theban alphabet, aka runes of Honorius. The two other sigils on the right sold for 13 smackaroos each. 1,300 buckaroos. Not bad.
It's good money. Good money for making the little tattoo symbol. Wow. I mean, that's not even. He sold all kinds of different stuff. And this little alphabet, if you've seen the cover of my book, you'll know where that came from. That's where it's from.
Yes.
Damien Echols uses the Theban script, Honorian alphabet, runes of Honorius, witch's alphabet. David Varro also employed this script into a tattoo. This is what you found. I didn't know this. This is Peter Jackson.
So, as reported, the tattoo artist was very hush-hush about the whole thing. Quote, it is understood that he and Echols visited White Tiger Tattoos in Crow Lane on Tuesday to get tattoos. Tattoo shop owner Greg Burt confirmed the men were there and had tattoos done, but declined to give more details. It was kind of special. I'd like to respect them for it.
And more. Damien Echols and Johnny Depp share many of the same tattoos, such as the crow and solo rune, meaning self. The rune is also a zigzag Native American glyphs in relation to Depp having become a member of the Comanche tribe. It represents movement upon Mother Earth and connection with Father Sky, thus more male-female symbolism and fertility. The runes on the knuckles are difficult to read as they are letters and symbols. Echols has generically stated, quote, runes on my fingers, symbols for protection, strength, insight, etc. Was this the inspiration for the crow tattoo? Maybe. It looks kind of like it. The crow is kind of like a symbol of like omens and things like that in the occult. It has kind of a more symbolic thing. We're only halfway through. This is and employing a symbol into his autograph. This is interesting. You can see this lettering and how he writes. These are like, when he was on for Life After Death, he was signing all these things. Dave Navarro and Alistair Crowley in the Egyptian pose. Bird in the hand of tattoos of Damien Echols, Johnny Depp, and Dave Navarro. So they all have these like bird symbols. Yeah. Navarro's tattoos, that bird symbol looks much more like the one in the Crowley, iconography than theirs. That almost emulates pictures of that I've seen in Crowley stuff.
The symbol has become part of the popular tattoo, which may be a takeoff of the symbol from The Brave movie, which Johnny Depp had tattooed on himself, a movie that he directed. Compare with photos of the tattoo that Damien Echols has tweeted. Yeah.
And the X. Damien Echols and Johnny Depp skeleton key tattoos, which some think is the Harley Davidson skeleton key. Concept of the skeleton key is a key that will open many doors. So that's and his wife, Echols' wife, wears that skeleton key stuff too.
Mm.
Skeleton key
productions. I'm just trying to alleviate you every now and then. Maybe we could just take turns.
Perfect.
Skeleton Key Production is a forum created by some of Echols' friends in order to display his writing and art. Thus, the signature glyph appears to be a stylized skeleton key. But what does it open?
Good question. Hermetic Reiki, Damien Echols, 2017, Essex Street, Salem, Massachusetts. So I think that's what he was running. Damien Echols opened Hermetic Reiki Center in Salem, Mass. He teaches meditation and Reiki, which means that he's laying hands on people and imparting energy into them and incorporates Kabbalistic concepts. Sessions are only $130 per hour. So Echols moved from Salem to New York, and I think he's in Louisiana now. So I think he left. He left New York.
Oh, you know what? I'm seeing your logo on the top right corner of my screen, so I can't read that full sentence right there.
Let me see if I can take that off.
Hermetic means that something is practicing a form of magic, employing the Esther spelling, which seeks to cause change via the usage of one's will. Note the reference to mind magic. At the Hermetic Reiki Center, he sells various crystals, ointments, herbs, etc. The symbol on the center includes 2 sets of sevens. 77 is a Crowleyan number, such as in Liber 77.
Yeah. So that symbol's there. Mind Magic, nobody's ever really seen that book. It's out there. It's not, the public hasn't seen it. So he does have private writings. All right. Damien Echols' Hermetic Reiki Center, which practices mind magic, makes sense with his worldview as both Hermetic and Reiki, refer to manipulation of energy by means of exercising will.
Even the meditating Buddha imagery could be a veiled reference to Aleister Crowley.
The middle portion of the design either is or made to appear to be a Chinese-style symbol. Compare with the middle portion of the Seal of Babylon.
So that's what we talked about earlier. The plotting, the inward geometric design sigil hidden within the outer sun ray-like design in Aleister Crowley's Seal of Babylon. Note the various sevens. Right, so the long rays are 7, the short rays are 7, and it forms a 7-pointed star.
Right, 7 on the inside, right? So it's 777. That has something to do with energy. I forgot what it was, but it had. Damien Echols' Hermetic Reiki symbol consists of 7 long sun-like rays, 7 short ones. 77 is the number of Aleister Crowley's magical system. You have the Lady Babylon. 7 and 7 coming together is like the marriage of the beast in Babylon too. In order to design it, one would plot the points at which large rays will appear, and the intersections are where the short rays will appear. And then this is like all the different crosses and stuff. John D. symbol. What's that guy's name? It's like a certain name, this symbol. It's not the Vitruvian name.
Oh, goodness. Oh, boy, I don't recall.
I forgot what it's called. It's definitely called. And then there's the double cross. Somebody says that outside design very similar to Godsmack. It wouldn't surprise me. In turn, Aleister Crowley's Seal of Babylon is derived from the original 007 Queen Elizabeth's court occultist, John D.
Double cross is popular in various forms and venues, such as the Nabisco logo and as used by satanic shock rocker King Diamond.
Note the likenesses. The one on the right is a version of the double cross superimposed right side up and upside down. That's the Seal of Baphomet in the middle. Crowley used that too.
Right. See, there it is. Yeah, it comes up again. The Aleister Crowley Baphomet symbol, signature symbol version is also found within the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry's 33-degree regalia.
Damien Echols' various illustration of trees, some very similar, signed with a skeleton key adorned with a gleaming halo. He likes the moon too. There's the moon.
Damien Echols' Buddhism-related illustrations.
Oh, we'll skip this one. This is just basically Kate Chesterton, the sleeping Buddha, as opposed to the wide awake. And Chesterton.
Right. So, but yeah, bottom line is that what those half-masked or closed eyes represent is basically lack of connection to the real world, right? Just seeking to get beyond it, so you're not really getting wrapped up in suffering, for instance, right? You're transcending it by just denying the reality of the real world. So cutting yourself off. Counter
states that against what the Christians are. They're always, it's looking out. Their eyes are open. Then the garden, Eden.
Yeah, all that tree imagery seems to correlate to the knowledge of the tree of the good, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so various Eastern, saints, Bodhidharma. And again, this is just all about transcendence and energy work.
Right. And this is his admiration for Danzig. He's a huge Danzig fan, which has the upside down cross imagery. Satanism, magical sex with demons. Danzig cross is an upside down version of the cross on the back of Aleister Crowley's tarot card. It's also the cross of the Rosicrucians and Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was a practitioner of Crowleyan magic. That is true.
Some more correlations of Scientology to these magical orders. Yeah. I mean, my goodness, L. Ron Hubbard, there it is, the Golden Dawn. I mean, come on, please.
Right, I'm telling you that, right? And man, like you're your own creation of salvation. Man can save himself, not God. Right?
Yeah, and there's good old Jack Parsons. Yeah.
That's who Crowley said was his number one most important disciple. Damien Echols ritual notes. He's talking about stuff within the 9-foot circle, drawing on the floor, Wiccan stuff, Thame, Gardnerian stuff. And then I think you have. We only got 20 left. But this charter document's very important. I put that into Children of the Beast. That's the charter Crowley gave Gardner, who's pretty much the founder of Wicca, Gerald Gardner.
Yeah.
I think Gardner paid for that, and Crowley signed it Baphomet. So it's important tie. A lot of the Wiccans don't even know that. They don't know the Crowleyan tie, and that's really saying something.
Right. See, there it is. The charter was of the OTO Order Templi Orientis, or Order of the Temple of the East Order of the Oriental Templars. Yeah, a bunch of guys establishing a magical order that now people think is all about woman power or whatever.
Right. Out in this world, a bunch of writing.
Yeah, Echols really old, early stuff, about, well, the typical stuff, blood and Satanism by any other name.
More drawings, things that he had, pictures, things. There's that cross with all the stuff on it. It's probably Glenn Danzig's cross. Who knows? There's the other drawing, that sacrifice. A lot of people have seen it.
And see, now go back a second. That top right drawing, you can see why we would think that there was a pentagram on his chest, because what he's showing you is that even if he's just drawing a bunch of dots, he's illustrating a pentagram.
Very true. There's like bookstore receipts, all kinds of.
This was trial evidence of Echols. That was actually, there you go.
The Green Man joins a goddess for spring fertility rites. Do you want to read that?
Damien Echols has illustrated much moon symbolism. Here he is visiting the statue of the fictional witch Samantha from the TV show Bewitched, as she flies on a broom with moon imagery.
Damien Echols has produced illustrations of Anubis and Troth. Anubis is the image of blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read all that. There's some of this stuff. I got to wrap this up. I only have an hour. So there's a lot more here. There's his Crowley reference. There he is with Ozzy Osbourne and Iomi. But yeah, you did a lot of work, man. A lot of really great work.
Yeah.
So kudos to you. But here's somebody wanted me to mention this. This is the article in the OTO that mentions Echols. So this is the official, or it says on the cover, Agape is the official organ of the U.S. Grand Lodge for Ordo Templi Orientis. Agape in Gematria, its Crowley system is 93. Very important thing to remember. So this is all this is the national paper that went out. What date is that? November 1st, 2006, Era Vulgaris. And on that is SK 931 in introduction. So that goes all into Crowley. He talks about Griffiths, all these other people. There's all the propaganda about the case, but it's all in there. But it basically, the core sentence says, knowing that the state of Arkansas would be combing over every detail in his book and letters for evidence of his involvement in the satanic cult, he chose to allow himself outed as a Thelemite within our community at great personal risk. He has chose to become registered with the OTO prison ministry. So he registered with the OTO prison ministry and knows what Thelemite, or the word Thelemite, is. So, that's from their own writing. And very few, if any, I don't even know if any other real researcher covered that at all. So you can look it up, SK31. Any questions, anybody? Where can people find your stuff, Ken? Get your new book.
And 931 is a 13 also.
Where can people find your books?
Oh, nowadays it's as simple as just go to Amazon and type up Ken Ammi, two M's, Ammi, and they're also in other book platforms. So maybe just hit a search engine, right? Search for Ken Ammi books, and you'll have enough books to last you for years.
Right. There's lots of writing. You can learn on many different subjects. You've done film analysis, cinema analysis, theological analysis. We did one on theo-sci-fi, so that's an interest. All the interest about Nephilim, how important that supposedly is to some of these other researchers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of very trenchant, timely information and knowledge that you can get. You can avoid a lot of the pitfalls, theological pitfalls, reading your stuff. I would definitely say that for sure. So.
Oh well, thank you. That means a lot, and I would certainly hope so.
Yeah, I would think for sure. At least you can stay away from like the Nephilim stuff. Ask Ken. Ken, have you ever seen a movie called Neon Demon?
Oh, I have. If I recall correctly, it all comes down to cannibalism in the modeling industry, or at least it comes down to that because they're so vicious and brutal in their climb to the top that they just transcend, basic human behavior and turn to murder and mayhem just to get ahead. If I remember correctly, it's been many, many years.
Stars Elfie.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah. He says he likes when I speak about stuff and angels. And yeah, that's one of I call it systematic biblical paranormology. That's what I try to specialize in. And if you get me started on that, forget about it. We'll be going 10 hours.
Yeah, I unfortunately.
Yeah, look at that Neon Demon. Oh, yeah, I know.
It's actually a Netflix movie called Dark Song. No, it's an occult ritual movie.
Yeah.
Seen that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I will say Dark Song has a nice redemptive ending. I do like that. I'm not sure I know for sure I don't like how they got there, but at least it's redemptive in the end.
I'll have to look that up. Ken definitely is. If you see my films with like smiley faces all over Hollywood, a lot of those are from his research. Like, he sends me all kinds of stuff from Flash.
Yeah. If you want to do a 5-hour show, we'll just sit here and show a slideshow of all the smiley faces.
That would be grueling. It would be much longer than this. Like, I'm glad that we had this. There's a lot of elements of this whole case. All these slides are over like 8 or 9 years old. So a lot has happened since this, but they're dated. But you can still get insights into some of these esoteric occult concepts, symbols, ideas, their theology, their ideology. So I think it's worthwhile for people to know that. So at least they're kind of aware of what they're being exposed to at certain times. But definitely during, movies and things like that. People are talking about this stuff, sex magic. Got anything else to add before we wrap it up, Ken?
No, just it's been a pleasure speaking with you and your audience again, as usual. May God bless you all.
All right, cool. Have a good one, Ken. Take care. All right, we're done.
Okay, bye.